I have to be starting up by saying, yeah, I have to be extremely humble. A week ago, if you had asked me that we could be finding ourselves where we are right now, I would have said impossible. But here we are. So, in terms of where we're going, I don't know. But here's what I see is happening. As you just, told the listeners, Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel seems to be moving from the problem being about Iran's nuclear program to the nature of the Islamic Republic. In other words, he's after regime change. Now, we do know that President Trump kind of gave Israel sort of a green light to go ahead and do what they're doing in terms of striking Iran. But there's a big question mark whether he would sign up for an open-ended regime change project in the Middle East when Iran is by far the largest target, if you will, for Israel in that country's history. So big question mark whether Israel can take President Trump down that road. The Iranians, for now, seem to want a de-escalation, as you put it, Tim. They want the Israelis to stop attacking them, and they're promising to stop attacking Israel. But that's because they're in a very bad place. They are shell-shocked. The regime has lost prominent members. And let me just wrap up with this. They know they don't have their own people behind them. And that's the worst place you can be if you are the Islamic Republic today.
How do you really resolve conflict in a region that really, if you go back, I mean, it's just war and violence and warfare. I mean, it's an area that has just been in continuous conflict, Alex. So I don't know, how do you really bring peace to the region?
Thanks, Carol. That's a big question, but let's be, if you indulge me, a bit fair to the Middle East. When you look at the history of the European continent, they were in a much worse place just 150 years ago. And, we all remember what happened First World War, Second War. In fact, Middle East has never experienced anything on that scale. Israelis, Iranians, Arabs, and Turks, they all have good reasons to want to coexist. I'm pretty sure that's the place Middle East will get to eventually. But right now, obviously, that's a distant prospect. But I mean, the promise right now is by Netanyahu and the Israelis that if you get rid of the Islamic Republic, then you've taken a giant step towards normalization in the region. That's a big promise. If Netanyahu can deliver for it, I think a lot of people would cheer him on. But it's a big if. Can he? Or is he just hoping that happens? So
sorry, I just want to jump in. We only have a few minutes. What would regime change and, quote, as you mentioned, getting rid of the Islamic Republic, end quote, in Iran look like?
So look, I mean, that's the big question. You don't really necessarily have an organized opposition ready to be flown to Tehran and take over. You do have individual like the Shah's son, Reza Pahlavi, who is in the United States, who has an agenda, who has supporters. Is a question mark whether he will be able to sort of rally the whole country in Iran behind him. I suspect he will have a very good chance. He's probably the best candidate. But look, again, United States has the history of Afghanistan, Iraq. This country doesn't want to take on another nation building project. So I think before we get down there, the Iranian people need to show signs that they're capable of actually being the captains of a ship like that. If Iran goes from being what it is, Islamic Republic, to something very different, they need to play a much more active role.
And look, I have not been to Iran, so I do, and not many Americans have. I know some Americans who have been there, but are they given the opportunity to actually have that privilege, given the society that they live in right now?
Look, if you are a leader in the Islamic Republic today, it's not about really privilege. It's a fact that you're being targeted by the Israelis who are taking senior members of the regime out. It's about survival. It's about recognizing that maybe this regime's time is up and it's time to jump and change course. Ali Khamenei is 86 years old, the supreme leader. A lot of younger people in that regime who probably can look forward to decades of living, and they know they've lost their own people. And this what's happening right now could be the moment for a lot of folks to defect. But it's a big if. I don't know. They might decide to fight and seek martyrdom, and some of them claim that that's what they want to do. Time will show.